Look, we spend an awful lot of time on our project cars around here, and we have the greasy fingernails, sore hands, and sleep deprivation to prove it. So when we do get some downtime, you'll often find us recuperating with a video game controller in our hand. From the mall arcade to the basement couch, plenty of gearheads got their first real taste of motorsports behind the joystick, driving pixelated Porsches and digital Dodges across some of the most famous tracks in racing history. So, for this Casual Fridays video feature, we're counting down our favorite driving and racing video games. Are you ready, player one? Press start, and let's jump right in. Imagine walking into an arcade and seeing three steering wheels sticking out of a single arcade cabinet. Well, friend, welcome to Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road. Released in the late 1980s, this arcade game and its later console parts offered a fun take on arena truck racing. Win some races and you can take your reward money to hop up your truck and attack the next track. Speaking of tracks, there are a ton of them, and it's always fun predicting how your little truck reacts to the various bounces and bumps that are unique to each course. We were always fans of the ones with the big water pits. Like many games on this list, this one's best enjoyed with a group of friends. And of course, the Iron Man himself will welcome you to the fun when you start the game.
Activate.
Well, a lot of our staffers here pushed hard for the Need to Speed series. We're inclined to favor Test Drive. That's because starting on PCs in the late 1980s, we have fond memories of blasting down the road in the cockpit of a Ferrari F40 or a Lamborghini Countach. But the Test Drive series really hit its stride when it went over to the PlayStation console about a decade later. That's because it kind of leaned heavily into the classic Detroit muscle scene and more arcade-style gameplay. In Test Drive 4, 5, and 6, you could take a 1967 GTO, or a ZL1 Corvette, or a Shelby Cobra down the hilly slopes of San Francisco or the narrow streets of Kyoto, Japan, avoiding police pursuit the entire way. Better yet, you could rip down the quarter mile behind the signature burble of a Hemi Cuda, and maybe humble one of those exotic Japanese or European imports in the opposing lane too. All told, if you're big on arcade action and could care less about authentic vehicle physics, the Test Drive series is for you.
Number 8.
Something about the phosphorescent green glow from the TV has us reminiscing hard about Dragster. Bringing friends over to sit on the basement Davenport with some sodas and a pizza as we shave precious seconds off our ETs, well, it just seemed like the perfect Saturday afternoon back then. Produced in the early days of console video games, there really was no established recipe for what a drag racing game should look like. Yet Dragster packs plenty of authentic details. You've got a good-looking rail dragster, a responsive throttle, and a tachometer, and there was a legit attempt at recreating the drag racing experience. Rev too much and you'll blow the engine. Leave too early and you'll red light. Shift too soon and you'll lug the transmission. But do it all right and you'll be rewarded with a little wheel stand and some screaming engine tones from the Atari 2600 mighty TIA chip. Sure, there are far more sophisticated games now, but it's downright amazing how much fun you can have with a single button. It's all about timing, and although this game admittedly takes a while to get a hang of, once you do, you'll get hooked. Until your mom tells you to go out and mow the lawn anyway.
Number 7.
Look, at no point did we say this was limited to just cars, and we couldn't think of a better way to enjoy two-wheeled fun than with Excitebike. Sure, Sega's Hang On gave you a nice MotoGP experience, but Excitebike let you build your own track. I'ma say it again. You could build your own track. For that reason alone, it deserves a place on this list. Anyone who's played this game can immediately picture the famous H-ramp that lets you get massive air because you of course put like 10 of them on a row on every track you built, right? Curiously, the game had a save feature on the Nintendo that never really worked right. Well, that's because the US game we got here was a direct port of the Japanese Famicom version that did have an optional save feature. That didn't stop us from waiting hours in the hope that our epic tracks would save for the next time though. Regardless, Excitebike is one of those games you can pick up and play anytime, anywhere, and immediately start to grin.
Number 6.
Outrun is notable here because its creator, Yu Suzuki, famously remarked that it's not a racing game, it's a driving game. And that's evident when you plunk a quarter in the slot. You hop in a drop-top Ferrari Testarossa, hit the pedal, and go. There are no competitors here per se. Instead, you race against the clock, dodging cars and other obstacles as you navigate down the highway. One of Outrun's most standout features is that you have control over the direction you're going. Race long enough and the road will fork to give you left and right lane options. You get to choose your own route here, and that's something that really hadn't been done in a major driving game before. But for us, the icing on the cake is the soundtrack. It's a clinic in mellow digital goodness, and Sega knew it was integral to the game experience, so it even gave you an animated car stereo sequence so you could choose your own cruising track before the game even begins. All told, it's the perfect way to wind down after a rough day in the shop.
Number 5.
We didn't forget about you PC gamers either. Blending elements of a role-playing game with 1950s hot rod culture, Street Rod is a nice change of pace from the typical button masher of the era. You had to buy a car, hop it up, and then go hustle local diner patrons into street racing for cash. Street Rod doesn't skimp on the details either, and you can tell a lot of thought went into getting it right. The car models and engines are authentic, as well as some other nuances. Heck, you can even advance or retard your ignition timing to get your engine to perform its best. Starting with an old jalopy, you build up money to buy better and better cars, and hopefully you'll earn enough to challenge the king in his souped-up Corvette Stingray. Street Rod gets overlooked a lot in racing video game discussions, and that's a shame because it really did set the tone for modern career modes in today's racing games. It's worth checking out on an emulator if you haven't played it yet.
Number 4.
No one ever said racing video games needed to be hyper-realistic, so when Mario Kart raced onto the Super Nintendo back in the early 1990s, it became an immediate fan favorite. Starring the familiar heroes and villains from all over the Mushroom Kingdom, Super Mario Kart injected new life into an old genre by adding a nice dose of whimsy to open-wheel racing. Weapons, power-ups, shortcuts, all contributed to the fun here, but for our money, it's best enjoyed with a group of friends. And as popular games often do, this spawned an entire franchise of Mario Kart racing games that continues to this day, along with plenty of copycats. How popular is Mario Kart? Well, Mario Kart version 8 Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch actually holds the distinction of outselling the original Super Mario Bros. Released in 1985.
Number 3.
As a counterpunch to the rival PlayStation game, which we'll get to here in a second, the original Forza Motorsport upped the ante with, some would argue, better graphics and improved gameplay. The two rival games would go on to spawn sort of an arms race in ever-improving graphics, vehicle dynamics, and overall game experience. Harnessing the power of the new Microsoft Xbox hardware, Forza dropped plenty of jaws with its available vehicles and gameplay modes. It also included authentic racetracks, so Forza really began to blur the line between a video game and a real driving simulator. And it could be credited with accelerating the development of more and more sophisticated game peripherals like feedback steering wheels, true analog controls, and gated shifters. Nowadays, the name Forza has become synonymous with racing games, and it would have ranked even higher on this list if it wasn't for another title that appeared a few years prior.
Number 2.
Personally, I still recall watching a demo of this game back in a toy store in the late 1990s. The kid who was playing it was ripping around the track in a Nissan Skyline GTR. Suffice it to say, the graphics for the era were amazing. When that same kid switched from a Nissan to a 1967 Corvette 427, before I knew it, I'd bought an entire PlayStation console just to play this game. From the massive amount of available cars to the ultra-realistic track, Gran Turismo was another quantum leap in what a racing game should be. You had a simulation mode that allowed you to earn money to buy cars, and then you had an arcade mode in case you wanted to jump right into racing. And what a lot of folks don't realize nowadays is that the Gran Turismo titles introduced a lot of North American gearheads to cars they had never really seen before, like the Mitsubishi Evolution and FTO, along with the Subaru WRX STI. In fact, later on, Nissan even used the Gran Turismo series to help promote the release of the new GTR in the United States.
Number 1.
Sure, there were plenty of racing games before Pole Position come out. But when this cabinet arrived in the arcades in the early 1980s, it was a watershed moment in video game history. For starters, with a real steering wheel, pedals, and a shifter, it offered the most immersive video game driving experience to date. But more importantly, Pole Position incorporated a ton of realistic features that gamers hadn't really seen before. The racetrack was modeled after the real Fuji International Speedway, and the racing mimicked Formula One. True to its name, you had to qualify before you began the actual race itself, and you had a standing start. Again, just like Formula One. Heck, there were even real advertisements on the trackside billboards, including Pepsi, Champion Spark Plugs, and Martini. None of this may sound impressive now, but back in 1983, it was a big deal. Pole Position was a massive hit in the arcades and was soon ported over to home consoles like the Atari 2600. It also spawned a sequel, Pole Position 2, that offered even more racetracks, along with a Saturday morning cartoon show. The controls and graphics were great, gameplay was fun, and it was just challenging enough to make you want to pump more quarters into the arcade cab. In other words, Pole Position set the standard for what a racing game should be, and every other game on this list can trace some of its lineage back to its pixels. So, agree with our top 10 list here? Do we need to hit the reset button? There are no continues left, but You can still keep the conversation going in the comments section of this video. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And in the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next Casual Fridays video feature on the Summit Racing YouTube channel.